And I think we're all aware that jihad denial enables jihad. In other words, if we weren't engaged in denial, I think we would agree that the Tsarnaevs would not have been able to do what they did. I think that Nidal Hassan wouldn't have been able to do what he did. So I think that there's definitely a complicity in jihad by those who deny jihad. However, we very much want there to be truth-telling. But let's suppose that tomorrow Obama just comes out and says, there's a problem with Surah 9.5, there's a problem with Surah 929, and Islamic theology, you know, it buffers, it sanctions, it mandates jihad, and, you know, blah, 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 blah. Wouldn't that be such an inflammatory situation at the same time where it would cause such a collision? And I'm obviously playing the devil's advocate here, but there is an argument to be said that it would bring on and inflame a gigantic conflict. And do we need to be maybe in some ways more strategic? Raymond?
Well, I mean, my initial answer is better now than later.
So in other words, let's get it on.
Let's get it, well, my thing, and when I'm asked these sorts of questions, is I'm guided by truth. Get the truth out. You know, whatever the consequences will be, they will be, and I'm sure they won't be very pretty. But if you, I mean, not to be a cliche, the truth will set us free. But if you get the truth out and stop all the dissembling that we get constantly, it's eventually going to come out. And what we're doing is actually, by wasting time and playing this game and not getting the truth out, you're letting the other side get stronger all the time.
Okay, 1 second. But Raymond, let's suppose that there's millions and millions of Muslims that, as we said, actually don't even know what's in the Quran, and they're just kind of maybe walking around, and all of a sudden the leader of the United States starts actually saying something quote-unquote bad against their religion. All of a sudden we're inflaming perhaps millions and millions of people.
But this has happened before, and this is what I was referring to. When the West was on the ascendancy, colonial era, a little before that, it's usually marked Napoleon's invasion of Egypt, 1798, and so forth. There was, I mean, if you look at people back then, Europeans and so forth, no one had any doubt what Islam is. I mean, what we're doing, this is a totally superfluous exercise if you took it back 100 years ago, because this was common sense. People knew it. They said it. They understood it. They forced it. For example, in the Ottoman Empire, the European powers told them to abolish the jizya tax and to treat Christians and Jews and so forth as citizens. So they were upfront in their face, and as I said earlier, there's actually a Muslim respect for that sort of thing. They respect that because it's power, they're laying it on the line, and then it's up to them to do what they want to do. Do they want to eliminate that? Do they want to fight back? And if so, good luck.
Okay. So. Bruce, kind of the danger of if we actually get what we want.
Well, the danger is as Ray said it out, and we went through this once before in the 30s, and it's very interesting to look at that segment of the Brits in the 30s who thought that Germany had gotten a raw deal with the Versailles settlement, that they had legitimate grievances, and that we can't really be too critical of them because we're just going to, you know, inflame them and push them into the Nazi party. And there were a lot of people, even at Munich and post-Munich, who said, well, this is our fault, you know, because we didn't address the grievances. It didn't help. It didn't help because Nazism was an ideology of dominance and conquest. And as Ray says, all of that appeasing simply confirmed their estimation that their enemy was weak and could be taken. And this is exactly what we're doing today. We are confirming their estimation that the West is corrupt, it's godless, all it cares about is money and material comfort. And they can see a lot of evidence of that on satellite TV, let's face it. And that, as bin Laden said, we ran from Mogadishu, we ran from Saigon, we run from everywhere. And so if we just push, if we just push, if we just push. And I agree, it just come right out and tell the truth, and let's sort out who's willing to die and who isn't.
Excellent. Just before we go to Robert, I'm thinking about the rounds left. Michael, approximately how much before question period?
I would do maybe 1 or 2 more rounds and go to questions.
Okay. Robert, on denial?
No war in history has ever been won by people engaged in wishful thinking and fantasy and self-deception about the motives and goals of the enemy. Ever. It's not going to happen now either. And moreover, the United States has not been standing for its own principles in this conflict. Imagine how different things would have been if we had gone into Afghanistan and Iraq after 9/11 and said, we are standing for and going to protect the freedom of speech, the freedom of conscience against the death penalty for apostasy, the equality of rights of women before the law, the equality of rights of non-Muslims with Muslims. And all Muslims who support that, we will protect you and we will help you. There would have been millions of Muslims, I would wager, who would have joined up and supported us on that basis, because there are millions of Muslims who see that in the West and want it, but they are trapped because they have no support and no help and no acknowledgement from the West that they have a good and legitimate cause. There are hundreds of thousands of secret converts from Islam to Christianity, or just atheists who are living underground in the Islamic world. If we had come in and said, we're going to protect the rights of apostates from Islam, we could have had hundreds of thousands of people supporting us. But we've never stood up for our own principles in this conflict. If we had been honest from the beginning, I think things would have been very different.
Okay, so let's talk